think the first thing you need to go back to is why did something like Amendment 41 pass in the first place? It's because people didn't have faith in their democracy anymore. They thought that, all elected officials were on the take and that their own individual best interests weren't at heart. And until we can flip that script, it's going to be hard to do anything, right? But when I tell people, look, there are huge restrictions. I can't accept donations from lobbyists during the legislative session. If I'm actually my favorite example that I like to use, if I'm at the vending machine down in the basement and, I put in 55 cents for my peanut butter cup, but it's a 60-cent peanut butter cup, and I'm digging around in my pocket for that last nickel, a lobbyist can't go in and put in that last nickel, right? It is that restrictive. And when I tell people that, I say, knowing that, do you think any better of your elected officials? Do you think people go, no, I think we're just as corrupt as we were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So it didn't do what it was intended to do. And I think the onus is on all of us, whether you're a legislator or a lobbyist or a community member, to prove the naysayers wrong, to say that, we are really doing our best to look out for everyone's best interests. So I think that's really where I want to start with these things. And also, some of the things were pretty ridiculous. People getting flown around the world on somebody else's dime, and then, when they come to the Capitol and say, hey, it'd be really great if you could work on this bill, does that create an uncomfortable or potentially unethical power dynamic? Probably. And so I think we need to take those things into account. I just don't think Amendment 41 has fixed any of that. And so I think, it's in our Constitution, it's the new rules of engagement, and we just, have to live with that until the voters decide to change the Constitution. So, what I try and do is I try and bring lawmakers and lobbyists to public forums together and say, this is so-and-so, these are the issues that he works on, he represents the ACLU, he represents the Assisted Living Association, she represents the Colorado Education Association. She's a lobbyist, but she wants to share her perspective for the folks that she represents. And then all of a sudden, hopefully the word lobbyist and the word, politician doesn't turn into a dirty word. And the biggest issue, the elephant in the room, is we still have money in politics. And, from my progressive standpoint, I think that has eroded more public trust than anything else, is the tens of millions, now almost billions of dollars that are going into elections, and they're almost, and millions of those dollars are being used for negative attack ads, which just tear people down. And obviously they do it because it works, and so I think we need to change, as a community, to say, you know what, if I see more negative attacks on these kinds of things, I'm not going to support whoever was putting those kind of negative, hateful things out there. And I think the other thing is we need to look broader at real campaign finance reform, where it's not just as lawmakers where I can't accept more than $400 from an individual, but you need to go to these outside shadowy groups that are pumping in millions of bucks into races that are pretty tiny. 70,000 people or 150,000 people saw over 36 mailers spent against one candidate this year. That's a ton of money for 150,000 people. That's a ton of trees that were killed needlessly for an election, when, if we all showed up and we all participated in our election process, we wouldn't need money in politics anymore. And so it's a tough issue. I won't call it a vicious cycle, but in the meantime, I just tell people my door is open. I'll keep a pot of coffee on, and and hopefully the rules of engagement will change in a way, but that really has to begin with all of us working together. Elected officials and lobbyists taking accountability for some of the mistakes that were made, and then also people just showing up and participating in their democracy. And it's got limited hours in a day, but if everyone just put in 10 hours, not a week, just 10 hours, we would see a much better election system and a much better system of democracy in our state.